the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Forever Remodeling. Stress-free and high-quality remodeling. View their stunning transformations online at the number 4everremodeling.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. So Don Jr. was part of the discussion for the Doha Summit of 2025. So he is in Qatar talking geopolitics and was not particularly complimentary of, the Eastern European peace effort, at least as it pertains to Russia and Ukraine and the efforts made there. And specifically with respect to the Ukrainians and America's ongoing efforts on their behalf. Here's what he had to say.
One of the most amazing things I got to witness, I was this summer with my beautiful girlfriend Bettina in Monaco, and we were driving around, and on an average day, 50% of the supercars, the Bugattis, the Ferraris, the this, all had Ukrainian plates. Do we think that was actually earned in Ukraine? I'd been to Ukraine 20 years ago. It wasn't like there was a plethora of wealth there. And yet you see the number two there getting arrested for stealing hundreds of millions of dollars. You hear all the rumors about what's going on. When I see every license plate on a supercar in Monaco being Bugattis, the rich fled. They let what they believed to be the peasant class fight these wars. And there was no incentive to stop, because as long as the money train was coming and they were stealing it and no one was auditing anything, the leaders, the decision makers, there was no reason for them to ever come to peace. No different than Putin. It wasn't the son of oligarchs that were fighting these wars. It's someone from Siberia that they're sending there. And he utilized the war to rebuild his manufacturing base. It was very clear that the sanctions that we put on did nothing to actually help. All it did was jack up the price of oil, which allowed him to basically pay for the war with the delta between the two while building up his manufacturing base. There was no incentive for anyone to ever get to the table. Zelensky knew he wouldn't win another election again, and they were continuing to steal. Putin was building up his manufacturing base, and all we had in the wake was millions of young men dying for nothing.
So that's one piece of it. And the next piece is him talking about America's sustained interest in Ukraine.
I don't think Ukraine is going to be abandoned, but I think for years, again, it was the same thing as the last answer, which is, well, we want to attack Russia. We want to do this. Well, when it comes to actually writing a check ourselves, no, the U.S. is going to do it. The American public doesn't have an appetite for that. Since the invasion of Ukraine, I heard major leaders, Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate in the United States, saying it's the number one issue for Republicans in the United States. And I say, that's weird. I speak to Republicans all over the country every day, probably far more than Mitch has ever spoken to, despite his 379-year career in politics. I did that on a weekly basis, and I surveyed people at every talk I did. It got to the point where it was probably well over 200,000 Americans that I spoke to directly. And I'd be in a room like this, and I'd ask, is Russia-Ukraine a top 3 issue for anyone in the room? Nothing. Is it a top 10 issue for anyone in the room? I think I got 3 people that once said it was a top 10 issue. 3 out of hundreds surveyed, hundreds of thousands, every weekend for 2 years, till basically through the campaign. One person misunderstood the question. He thought it was a double negative. One person was actually from Kiev, so he was like, it was a big deal for him. And the other person was, I think on the board of Raytheon. So there was no appetite for that, but that didn't stop a Republican Party from saying it's the number one issue. It's not, and we actually have to listen to the will of those people. So we want peace, we want to stop the death, but I even saw that yesterday where, on this very stage, what was the idea for Europe, who is on the border of Ukraine, who has much more at stake if this happens? Well, our plan is to win economically. when pressed on the issue. How are you going to do that? Well, we're just going to wait for Russia to go bankrupt. That's not a plan. That's not an idea. The gentleman from Spain was a lovely guy. I saw him last night later on at the forum, but Spain was putting in 2.2% rather than the 5% required by NATO, because my father actually wanted people who are the biggest stakeholders to get into the game. Well, we feel that our 2.2% is being utilized more efficiently, and therefore we're not. That's not an answer. That's not a solution. And again, I understand why they are there, because America has set a precedent for decades that they'll just write the check. But if the will of the people isn't there, everyone needs to step up. Everyone has to do their share. And that includes what's happening here in the Middle East. If we do that collectively, we can get to an answer. But if we default to the old ways of America's just going to be the big idiot with a checkbook, that's not going to work. That's not going to happen.
That, if there was a motif in Don Jr.'s remarks, it was that last line, America's not going to be the big idiot with the checkbook. For more on this, pleased to be joined by Stephen Bucci, who served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thanks for joining us as usual.
It's always my pleasure to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
So, Stephen, not going to be the idiot with the big checkbook.
Well, with all due respect to the president's son, number one, he's not a pollster, and his, self-described polling efforts are not exactly a scientific.
No, it's anecdotal,
case.
Right?
It's not just anecdotal; it's fictional. That kind of stuff is never accurate, and if he really feels that way, I'd like to know if that's the way he's advising his father or talking to his father, because otherwise what he's saying is manifestly unhealthy and unhelpful to anyone. There is a little more at stake than just America's economic interests here, though that's involved in it. There is a little more skin in the game in Europe and the threat that Russia poses than Donald Jr. there is indicating, and I think it's kind of glib and sort of smarty pants response. No offense, he's never run a country. He's never had his country attacked. He's kind of giving the left a lot of fodder for the fact that the Trumps are a bunch of clowns that are not serious players. They're just, oh yeah, just this is the truth. I know the truth. Just do what I tell you to do. I mean, that's not being a person of the people. That's sort of the definition of an oligarch. Oh, you guys are just being fooled. You just need to listen to me. I've got the answer. Look, do we need to monitor the aid we give to Ukrainians? Absolutely. Do we need to monitor it better than we're doing? Yeah, definitely. I've seen us fight several wars, and I've never seen it, the aid we've given to other people, monitor as it should be, because we get focused on the fight, not on the
oversight,
logistics, if you will.
Right.
So I just I'm sorry, Don Jr.'s comment just sort of pissed me off, because he's not a player in this process. He's another American citizen who probably knows a heck of a lot less about this than he thinks he does.
Well, that may be true, but I don't think it may have been more glib than others would express it. But I don't think, my sense is that, that sort of opinion about Ukraine is shared by a lot of Republicans, and including some of those in Trump's inner circle. I'm probably not Rubio, but I don't think he's that far from J.D. Vance on Ukraine, for example. And it may be, and what John Jr. said in Doha may also be sort of front-running his father's exasperation with the process to try to get to peace in Eastern Europe. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think absolutely President Trump is frustrated with this process, but I'm concerned that the result is going to be we can pressure the Ukrainians. We're not having a heck of a lot of success pressuring Putin to change, so let's change what we can, regardless of what's right and what's not right. And I think that's a dangerous thing to do. That is Chamberlain-esque. Is okay. We'll do what we can, and I'm sorry, the Ukrainians were attacked. They were not. They didn't start this, and whatever's happened since then, they were the ones attacked by another country for absolutely no discernible justification that anybody in their right mind believes, and to just walk away and say, well, it's too hard to get Putin to change, so screw it. We'll just let him have everything he wants and hope for the best. That's delusional.
All right, so there's this new national security document that's been put out, and it was praised by Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin's flack, who essentially said that, their read is that less democracy, evangelism, more great power, pragmatism, and a recognition that the world is carved into zones where Washington shouldn't overextend, and that that the United States is going to, as one wag said, play more of a consultant role in Europe than a commander role. Don Bacon, who, as you know, is a veteran, he's also a congressman from Nebraska, Republican, but he's often a critic of President Trump, and he was here. He basically said that, he didn't basically say it. This is exactly what he posted on X. One thing that stands out in the new national military strategy is that it is 10 times more critical of Europe than Russia. Although I don't know if that's, well, I don't want to go too many layers here, but just in terms of what Bacon said, I mean, we should be more constructively critical of our allies than our known adversaries. I mean, sort of like what we know about Russia is, built into the price of the national security strategy because they're one of the targets. And so the bigger issue is what our allies need to be doing, in our opinion, to support the overall effort. But I'll let you comment.
Yeah, look, first of all, the national security strategy is an important benchmark. It's a generalized, very, as we used to say, like little big hand, little map kind of look at what America is doing. It is not a policy strategy in the sense of lots of details, and this is exactly how we're going to do it. It's almost a public affairs sort of level statement. It's not classified. So it's a very generalized statement that was mandated for the federal government to produce every year by a congressman years and years ago. The laws never changed. We continue to do it. Most administrations consider it useful, but not necessarily the most relevant document that runs how we do foreign policy. So let's keep it in perspective. The public gets excited about it because we get to read it. It's something they can publish in the paper. You can download it, and it's short. It's like 15 pages or so. So it's readable for a Washington document.
So are the Russians being sort of performatively celebratory in reaction to it, even though they recognize that it's not particularly important in the sort of global realpolitik?
Yeah, I think the Russians are going to grab at anything that they can point to that says, see, Trump agrees with us. And that's why you have to be really careful with people like the Russians, because they do read all of our crap. They even read the stuff that's classified when they steal it, and they will manipulate the response to that to their advantage.
So
their analysis of it isn't exactly what everybody should be hanging on.
Well, so then
they're not going to tell us the truth.
So then Don Bacon is wrong to, be passively aggressively bitching about it.
He can, but he doesn't like President Trump, so he's going to bitch about it no matter what Trump says.
No, I know, but I mean, he knows better than to take this, to make the characterization he did, to sort of lean on Russia's reaction to support his critique and so on and so forth. He knows that is off base, or should know.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay. All right. I wanted to get to something else. The narco boat strikes. So you have more veterans from the Democrat Socialist Party commenting on this, and really, I mean, of course they're going to continue to overheat on this, but it's sort of sad when, particularly somebody like Seth Moulton, who has shown fits of common sense, who's a Marine who fought combat missions. Has this to say about the narco boat strikes?
I mean, look, the President of the United States and his Secretary of Defense are conducting murder on the high seas. They're committing murder, and Americans should care. Like, look, none of us like drug traffickers, but we have laws that say that drug traffickers don't get summarily executed. And if it's happening off the coast of America with people that we don't know, just give it time before Donald Trump starts doing this same kind of thing to people we do know right here at home. It matters if the President of the United States breaks the law.
I mean, first to characterize it as murder. So the administration is a murderous regime. They're committing war crimes. And then to suggest that, it's a stone's throw from striking Americans. And just one more before you comment, Stephen. Tammy Duckworth, our junior senator here in Illinois, and also a veteran.
The fact that we do have professionals, our military men and women are the utmost professionals. The problem is they've not been authorized to be at war. And by the way, the individuals in that boat were not even aimed at the United States. So everything that they've done has been illegal. It's illegal under international law. It's illegal under the Geneva Convention. And it certainly is even illegal under domestic law. It was essentially murder with that double tap strike.
I mean, that's a very strong statement. Murder.
Dana
Does
Bash.
that constitute a war crime? Is that what you're saying?
It is a war crime. It's illegal. How will you put it? It's all illegal.
Murders, war crimes, soon to turn those drone strikes on Americans, Stephen?
Again, being very breathless and swooning and clutching their pearls. Look, first she said, well, we're not at war. You can't do this. Well, then how is it a war crime if you're not at war?
Good point.
These are non-legal experts. They're not people that have ever served as JAGs. Senator Duckworth flew helicopters. She's not a military law expert. I'm sorry, she's not. And there is some debate among the legal profession that do have the experience to have an intelligence conversation about this, about whether the strikes are legitimate or not, because they need to have an authorization for the use of military force, or you don't. Are you doing it under the War Powers Act, the prior part where the president gets to act in the interests of national security before Congress authorizes it? That debate is ongoing. But to say that these are just innocent people, we should stop them and read them their rights, and I'm sorry, we gave up on that with drugs and terrorism after 9/11, when the Clinton doctrine of this is all a police responsibility. They need to be apprehended, read their rights, and put on trial. No, you don't have to do that in international waters. These guys are pirates. They can be shot. They can be hit twice when they're still trying to accomplish their mission and their boat hasn't sunk yet. The idea that the Dems are fighting tooth and nail to protect these people is beyond belief to me. Now,
Well, the other thing,
that's a different thing.
Well, of course it is. I mean, and Seth Moulton, it's just the height of irresponsibility to suggest that without foundation. But that's the nature of our politics. I understand, but it's pathetic. It's really, it actually does sadden me that a Marine would say something like Seth Moulton said. But the other thing is, the Obama drone strikes. Obama was a prolific user of drone strikes during his term, and I know it was sort of under some, expanded definition of the post 9/11 authorization of the use of force. But those same legal experts debated that too, and those debates rage on. So the hypocrisy as per usual. But it's important to point out that this is not really breaking new ground. It's just applying it in a different theater.
That's exactly right, and the Dems ought to think about that. If it comes down and this is determined to be illegal, if this requires legal action against the people who participate or the people who gave them the orders, this could extend back to President Obama in spades, for sure. Look, 70% of the American people are thrilled with what's going on with this, even the so-called double tap, which is a stupid distinction. But it's politics. It's more political theater. It's not helping America. It's not helping us domestically with our own debates because they're getting unserious, and it's not helping us internationally because there are countries with whom we're friends that are very, oh my God, this is terrible. We need to be nice to everybody. No, these people, my favorite one was, this guy was probably forced to drive the boat anyway. No, it's his job. He volunteered to do this.
Right. We need to get the backstory in every lieutenant in the cartels before we decide whether or not they're a bad guy. He had a difficult childhood. The other thing. The other thing here, too, that's a real tell, is they're not going after Admiral Mitch Bradley. And Bradley did the briefing last week. He is a decorated military leader. And, he's the one that gave the quote unquote double tap double tap order. And, and the argument that he made is they were still, in the fight. And they're not challenging that, and they're not saying Admiral Bradley's a traitor, Admiral Bradley's a murderer. They're just skipping over the guy who made the call to characterize Trump as the murderer and the war criminal. It's really, really disingenuous.
Yeah, it's completely disingenuous. And look, I'm not saying there's not going to be continued legal debate about this. There will be. We still don't have a ruling on the War Powers Act from the end of the Vietnam War. There is still a diametrically opposed analysis points on how that works. And we don't have a decision on it because no one's pushed it to the Supreme Court because both sides realized they could lose. Both sides, interpretation-wise. And this is going to fall into that same category. But, the difference is the left has a lot more media outlets to push their idea out there than the right ones, and we got to just keep fighting.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, and Stephen joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Honey, what's for dinner?
Honestly, nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Because every time I need a pan, I